But yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, great.
Okay. So hi and welcome. For those of you who don't know, I'm Sarah Kralik. I'm the COO here at Studio B, and I am so excited to welcome you to this week's interview. We're going to be talking about the concept of social wellness, which is fascinating and multifaceted, and I think it's just such an important conversation to be having right now. And joining us on this exploration today is my dear friend and colleague, Amy Baglan, who's calling in from Denver, Colorado right now. So Amy, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here. I love that our paths are crossing.
I know, it's so wild, but I wouldn't, I'm not surprised by the universe much anymore.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. So what I would love to do, I'd actually love to read your bio as a starting point. I think it gives such a lovely snapshot of who you are and what you're all about. So we'll start there and then jump into some great conversation. Is that cool with you?
Cool.
Okay. So in the past 10 years, Amy Baglan has built 3 companies dedicated to connection and relationships. As co-founder of MeetMindful and Fabriq, she has helped over 1 million people meet, connect, and deepen relationships of all types. In just a few short years, Amy built a powerful personal network of changemakers and entrepreneurs from scratch. She raised over $9 million from mission-aligned investors and built a team with one of the best company cultures around, voted number 2 in Colorado. Driven by her desire for others to build valuable relationships, she's personally introduced hundreds of people, acting as a catalyst for new friendships, partnerships, and communities to grow. As an advisor to the Society for Social Health and Wellbeing and the host of the Wellness 3.0 podcast, the first show dedicated to social wellness, Amy is extremely active in building an ecosystem of leaders in social health and wellness. She's spoken at events like the World Happiness Summit, World Changing Women's Summit, Habit Hackers, and Startup Weekend, and her work has been featured in Inc., Origin Magazine, Yoga Journal, Women's Health, Cosmopolitan, Elephant Journal, Mind Body Green, and more. I'm so happy to have you here. And I have to tell you, I've read your bio quite a few times, just kind of prepping and getting some notes together. And every time I graze over has helped 1 million people, I'm just like, oh, what a cool, what a testament to someone who has identified a strength, something they're passionate about, and has leveraged that for good in the world. And I think like it's something we really need. I mean, certainly right now, but just on the whole, we really, really need it. So it's incredible. I love that this is like how your story is unfolding. So I would love if you could chat a little bit about, do you see key events, or do you see like the path that kind of brought you to your work in these companies? Certainly MeetMindful was a huge formative moment, and now the work you're doing at Fabriq is just incredible. So can you just kind of give us a walkthrough of how you see that evolving for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy to hear the bio being read when I'm listening, and I have a similar reaction to the 1 million people. I'm like, wow, like that's kind of real. And so thank you for saying that, because I also have a similar reaction, believe it or not. And so just want to really get your question. Are you looking for the background, or are you looking for
the background? Yeah? Like what brought you to this like current moment? And really like a focus on like how did you discover this was your strength and like your passion? Like what were some of the events that kind of like brought you to?
So I feel like I can't jump into the story without just saying what I've come to learn about myself. Oh, somebody's on an elliptical machine. That's pretty cool. I'm noticing this as I'm talking. Hi, Paula. Great way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Awesome.
I love it. I can't hear you. You're muted. Anyway.
I was supposed to turn my video off.
Well, thank you for that, because I've not seen that happen on a Zoom call yet during this whole quarantine time. So I just want to say thank you. That was awesome. I have my Peloton right here, but I haven't yet double dipped, but I think I might soon. Anyway, so to answer your question, Sarah, like what comes up for me first is actually when I was young, I've done a lot of work around this, around attachment work and attachment theory and attachment styles. And I came from a home of very loving parents and family. And there wasn't a lot of emotional attunement. And I learned very early on that I had this need for connection that I was never kind of like getting as a child. And I'm just like going there deep, like right now in the very first thing I say. Because I feel like to own it and to really become at peace with this helps me integrate it, but then also helps others who may not necessarily be at that point of integration or awareness yet, and like normalizes it, because it is not abnormal, I'll say that much. And so what I've come to learn over the years is that this kind of core wounding of my own of not getting the connection I needed as a child and growing up was, again, through very loving parents who just didn't have the resources and tools themselves.
Right.
But that really shaped me into somebody who, as I came into my path of it started with yoga and meditation in my mid-20s, and then grew into a path of growth mindset, personal development work, and healing work. And I've really come to realize that this deep obsession and just core interest in connection and relationships and strong, fulfilling relationships kind of stems from that. So it kind of goes all the way back there. And I'm grateful to that, because, I've been able to take something that I know at times has caused me pain in the past, and then bring it into in a little bit more useful thing for the world, right? And for people who are engaging with the products that I've been a part of creating. Feels really cool. I feel grateful for that. It feels like the bright side, or the the positive side of the experiences. So that's in a nutshell why I'm interested in this work. And it's something that I feel really passionate about, because I've seen the changes in my own life. And I think a lot of us, the work you guys are in, same thing. Like, you've had your own personal experiences and practices. And then it's when you feel the call to bring that to others, it is undeniable. You can't ignore it. So that brought me to this work. When I started MeetMindful, which Sarah was one of our very first team members at MeetMindful back in 2014. MeetMindful was, of course, a business opportunity, and there was a gap in the market and all the kind of linear, reasons that entrepreneurs go into business, but also driven by a core belief that we all need more meaningful connection in our life every day, and that for those who are single looking for a partner, and they're in the space of spirituality, personal development, mindfulness, wellness, life-oriented lifestyles, etc. I don't have the data, but I'd venture to say 98% of those folks literally need a like-minded partner in order to be satisfied in that relationship, because that growth mindset and that approach and the value set that people live with, it's critical to surround yourself with others like that when you're on that path. And so that was the why behind MeetMindful, and then that ultimately led us to Fabriq, but I won't go down that path quite yet. I'm sure you have some other questions there.
So yeah, there's going to be so much great stuff to talk about with Fabric. So I mean, I know it's been a very recent transition for you to step away from your role at MeetMindful. So you were so heavily involved in everything in that company for so long. Did you start to see, and if the timeline doesn't completely align, correct me, but did you start to see any impact in the business with everything that's going on right now with COVID?
Yeah, so just from a timeline perspective, we were operating two products. We were operating MeetMindful, and then also putting much of our time and focus into taking Fabric out of beta. So Fabric launched a year ago, essentially a year ago to I think a year and a week ago, let's call it. And so we were working really hard to bring this product out of beta into a kind of, consumer ready state. And we can talk more about it later, but Fabric is the product that has no, there's no other thing like it, and there's no roadmap for it. So it's a lot different from building a dating app where you know what the features are and what the business model should be and all that. So it took a lot of flexing different types of muscles that we got to build over the last year. And anyway, so when COVID-19 hit, we were in final negotiations for selling MeetMindful. And of course, that was confidential at the time. And we moved forward with the sale April 3rd, we closed. So essentially, 4 or 5 weeks ago. And so it was really wonderful to move forward with a transaction like that during this time. Yeah. And also to have our baby be in the hands of people who are excited to love up on it full time and grow it and, bring it into its next chapter. I feel super grateful that it gets to move and live on beyond us. That's a sense of gratitude and amazement that I don't think I expected to feel until it happened. It was funny when we were closing and talking about the impact of the coronavirus. We were closing the deal together, and we did it on Zoom, obviously, because everything happens on Zoom now. Right. And can I screen share this, because it's really funny?
Oh, sure.
It's just a good laugh. Let's find it. Where is it? Okay. So have you guys discovered the Snapchat filters yet?
So I don't have Snapchat.
Me neither. But there's Snap Camera, which you can put over your camera. This was our highly professional moment of closing the transaction, and we were all wearing filters, and it was hilarious. The guy on the bottom right is, in fact, a man. Anyway, I just bring it up to say, we brought some lightness to the situation. And it was exciting to move forward with the closing. And then as far as Fabric has gone during this time, it's been fascinating to have a product that is literally designed to help people stay more meaningfully connected to the people that matter most to them.
Yeah.
And then have this happen and be in quarantine. And so it's been really cool to see the increase in usage on Fabric, and most notably the increase in connections. The last time I checked the data, there was a 43 or 47% increase in connections per user during this time, which is exactly, that tells me everything I need to know in a nutshell. This is what we set out to do, and people are using it in that way. So that feels really gratifying as well. We'll see the longer term effects of this over time. I think we're only 8 weeks in, right?
Right. Well, let's talk about Fabric then. Let's talk about, I would love for you to give kind of an overview of what the product does, so people can get a sense for it. But it's really remarkable that the product predates this crazy moment, but it's, my goodness, what a gift to the world right now, So let's talk about Fabric please give us, the overview of what it does, what you intended it to do, even where it's going. We'd love to hear more.
Great. Yeah. So you mentioned when we started this call that we would be talking about social wellness, and that is the core of what Fabriq is all about. And I mentioned earlier that the big why behind MeetMindful from day one was always to help people find more meaningful connection in their lives every day. And so we ended up making a pretty big pivot and asking ourselves, how can we expand on the work that we're doing with MeetMindful to help fulfill this bigger vision? And where can we look for inspiration for what that expansion looks like? And then we looked at, and I don't know how many people listening have noticed, but in the past few years, the headlines in mainstream media around loneliness, social isolation, and disconnection just like blew up. And we were noticing this in 2018. And we were like, man, like what is going on that's causing this to happen right now? And let's dig into that. And so what we did was we looked at the definition of health. And according to the World Health Organization, the definition starts with health is a complete state of mental, physical, and social well-being. And I remember looking at that and thinking like, man, mental and physical health and wellness are massive, industries. They have their experts and their podcasts and their practices that you're supposed to be doing. And it's like accepted, right? But then social well-being or social wellness, as far as I was concerned, is a giant question mark. And why are we not talking about it if this is, one of the three legs of the stool of health, right? Weird analogy, but you get it. One piece of the pie, right? And so we looked at the research around social wellness, what work is being done in this space, and it's largely kept to government, universities, and military. Some examples, reintegrating somebody who had gone off in service in the military and come back and use social wellness assessments and treatment to reintegrate into society. So it's been studied in numbers of ways and hadn't kind of crossed over into the mainstream culture yet. Mm-hmm. And so we decided, all right, if we want to build something that's based on helping people feel more connected, less isolated, less lonely, then let's focus on building a product that helps people improve their social wellness. And so that's kind of how that shift and it started happening. And for entrepreneurs listening, it can be very easy when you have an idea to go, okay, let's build everything. Like, this is going to be huge. Let's build all the features. And like, that's a recipe for disaster because you got to start with one thing, do it really well, and then begin to slowly branch out from there. Otherwise, the market gets confused and doesn't know what you're doing. So, and believe me, that is my tendency. And then my co-founder, Adam, is the one who like reels me back in and is like, let's do this first. So I'm saying this more so because I have to remind myself all the time. Sarah, I think you can remember that. So what we did is we started diving into what helps people feel like they have a strong social fabric and strong relationships, fulfilling relationships. And because these are some of the core tenets of social wellness, there's other things as well that we didn't dive deeply into, namely because choose one thing first. Right. And what we kept hearing was one of the challenges that I have, this is from other people, one of the challenges I have with having fulfilling relationships and good connections is that I really suck at staying in touch. I'm so busy and overwhelmed, and I'm not staying on top of things. People are falling through the cracks, and I just feel like I suck at it. Relationships fizzle out. Isn't that how life goes?
Yeah.
And I'm reminded every time I talk about this of when they interview people on their deathbed, and the number one thing that people bring up and regrets is relationships that they let go of or never repaired. Didn't prioritize. And I just feel so sad thinking about that. And it's totally avoidable. And so how can we build a product? This became the North Star that helps people prioritize their relationships, keep those relationships strong, and help people meet their goals and intentions that they have around their relationships. So ultimately, how can we build a tool that becomes like a self-care tool for your relationships to strengthen your social fabric? And I'd like to think it goes without saying, but I don't believe it does, that social media doesn't really solve that job.
Right.
Now, of course, I see people I know and love on social media, but it doesn't help strengthen that relationship. And if anything, it actually puts me in a dopamine addiction cycle of this is like, quantity over quality matters, breadth over depth matters more. And, the most engaging piece of content matters most. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't really cutting it. Even if that started with good intentions, I don't think that's where we ended up. Not to hate on social media, but I don't think it fulfills in this job. And so we started looking to Robin Dunbar's research and Dunbar's number, which many people may have heard of, that essentially states that humans can effectively maintain up to 150 relationships at one point in time. And those relationships are organized into circles of closeness. You have your inner circle, maybe 5 people or so, your middle circle, maybe 10 more, your outer circle of 35 or so for a total of 50, and then like 100 acquaintances on the outside. And so that's what we designed the app experience to be about, where you identify when you first come in who your most important people are, who you may have lost touch with that you want to rekindle, who you want to bring closer, who maybe you just recently got to know and you want them to be a permanent fixture in your life as a friend or somebody that that's in your social fabric, in your circles. And what we hear from our users is that exercise alone of setting up their fabric is very eye-opening, because for whatever reason, like we pay so much attention to I'm just going to give like the quintessential growth mindset person, right? Like I have my meditation practice, I have my, specific diet I pay attention to, I have my movement and my workouts, I have my gratitude practice, I have, and the list goes on, right? Where do your relationships fall in that? And what are you using to help them keep those strong? Mm-hmm. So we ultimately are building Fabric to be that tool. And what you can do is once you set up your people and your fabric, and then you decide, okay, how often do I want to be in touch with each of these people? I want to reach out to my sister every other week. I want to be in touch with my cousin every few months. I want to be in touch with my bestie every week, and my parents every week. And Fabric has a really simple UI that reminds you how much time has elapsed for each person and kind of organizes in a really simple way who's coming up, if you will. And then also for the people who want a little bit more assistance or inspiration on how to kick off a conversation or a connection to be a little bit more fulfilling and interesting, instead of like, how are you? Or what are you doing this weekend? I mean, not everybody has this challenge, but a number of people do. And a certain subset of our users were asking for that. So we created connection starters as well that folks can use to have a different type of conversation. And then finally, Fabric helps you, 2 more things. Fabric helps you organize like notes and reminders for your people. So if you tell me that, your kid is sick, or you guys are moving soon, or you have a job interview, like how am I going to remember that with everything else that's going on in my life? I think we all try. Mm-hmm. And I know many of us, myself, certainly, I fail at it all the time because my brain is like a really terrible thing to rely on for this sort of stuff. Right. So in Fabric, you can organize that stuff and get easy reminders on when it's time to follow up. And then lastly, we just released goal tracking. So I can create goals around my relationships, and then Fabric will give me like just little coachable moments and activities or challenges that I can do to meet those goals. And that's going to be something that we're going to be expanding on, the kind of coaching element within the product itself.
I love that. I love that. And I love, I think of all the features, number one, it's such a simple concept, but it's like I mean, I forget to connect with my husband, and I like live with him. You know what I mean? Like it's just such an easy thing to let fall away when you're, you know, if you're a workaholic, or you have kids, or you have, you know, you're running them all over the place, or, you know, there's so many things that can get in the way. And it doesn't typically take much. You know, I remember the work that I did with Amy was, I was the managing editor at MeetMindful. So I was handling so many articles about connection, and sometimes I would laugh to myself because I'm like, my goodness, like I'm like an expert in some ways because I have like such a broad like volume of knowledge of this stuff, but when it comes to practicing, sometimes it can really escape you. And one of the things that was the most powerful for me was the concept of a bid. And I'm sure you're familiar with the idea, but a bid for attention. So, you know, if I'm standing next to you and I say like, oh, hey, Amy, check this out. It's very important in that moment that you acknowledge what I'm offering to you. So I love the idea of that note element, because that's like taking a bid to the next level, where you're, you know, you're keeping track of something that's important to this person, and you're paying the bid back in such a different way. It's like a bigger gesture, because I know when someone asks me out of the blue, like, oh, how's your brother doing after that surgery, or whatever it is, it really impacts you. It really does, you know, and you forget how much of that you're craving. Because I'll also agree with you, the social media element, yes, we're more connected, but we're also so distracted. So that's why I love the simplicity of your product, and like what it's teaching us. You know, it's really teaching us to don't overcomplicate it, and recognize how powerful it is, you know?
Yeah, there's something about, I mean, so many things to say there. One, like, sad as it is, like, we're not being taught this. Like, kids aren't being taught this unless they're blessed to be in a program with a certain teacher that makes an impact on them there. But normally people aren't being taught great listening skills, communication skills, relationship building skills. And let's not kid ourselves, networking skills is not the same thing,
Right.
which does get taught, you know, in business schools or whatever. So the beautiful thing about it is that there's a second order effect. Like you mentioned, it feels great as the person who's following up or reaching out to do that action, and definitely is self-serving in that way. Like, it helps me feel like I'm a contribution to somebody. But there's a second effect there, where that person feels seen, heard, cared for, and supported. And what that does, I'm not a scientist, but what that does for the nervous system and feelings of safety and support, it's huge. And so, and then who knows, if they show up in a different way, that impacts somebody else around them. And so there's a real snowball effect here that I think is just really important to put in motion. And I you know, about the bids that you mentioned, I love that study showing, I think the Gottmans did it, about, you know, couples who they can predict if somebody's going to get divorced based on noticing if there's a certain ratio of bids being paid attention to or not, which is pretty cool. That's about being others focused, right? If I'm so in my own head and ego, and like, it's all about what's the impact on me, I'm not going to be others focused. And so it's, sometimes we need the simple tools and the simple skill building to make it a habit.
Yeah. So great. Well, can I ask you, you know, because, so outside of, you know, with the social distancing that's still, I don't know if they've started to lift things in Denver, but I just anticipate, even when they start lifting the restrictions, we're going to be moving through the world in a different way than we were previously. So outside of, say, picking up the phone, what kind of ways can we facilitate this feeling of connection, this feeling of you know, social wellness as a whole, or if we want to specifically focus on, interpersonal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of people are either consciously or unconsciously wondering this and feeling this. And I actually, about a week into the quarantine, committed to a 10-day Facebook Live series. And so each of those videos has its own kind of focus of ways that we can be more meaningfully connected to the people in our lives and how to strengthen our relationships during this time. And so for folks who want to check out our Facebook page on Fabriq, on our Fabriq's Facebook page on Facebook. And also we have
it all up, don't worry.
We have all the videos uploaded on YouTube as well. It's Fabriq, Fabriq. Those are some great resources that are specifically focused on this question. One of the things that, it's so simple. I think so much of this goes back to simplicity. They are quite simple, but a couple things that I find to be really useful. I'll give 3 different ideas for right now, and I don't think it matters whether it's right now and you're still in quarantine or it's when things start to open up, whatever it is, your communication patterns pretty much remain the same. So one of my favorite is for those who love morning practices and potentially journaling or gratitude practices. We all know about doing a gratitude practice in the morning or the end of the day. What am I grateful for? And I like to just shift that a little bit to who am I grateful for? And not just a blanket gratitude, but a specific gratitude. So, and Sarah, you may remember this from conscious leadership work that we all did. Specific gratitude makes all the difference. And so if I'm doing my morning practice and I want to do a quick gratitude for 3 people in my life, something that happened yesterday that I'm specifically grateful for, and want to send them a little bit of love and feel that, like just really feel the gratitude like viscerally in our bodies. That's one that I think is great. So focusing gratitude on our people. Another one that I borrowed this from Brendon Burchard, who has a high performance journal, which is a morning journal. There's so many of them. And I really love this one in particular because one of the questions, how like we do these are the 3 most important tasks I'm going to get done today, right? And these are, the goals I have for the day. These are my progress towards our goals. One of the questions he has in that journal that I love is who's one person that I can delight or surprise today?
Oh, I love that.
And how can I do it?
That's great.
That is so easy.
Yeah.
If you think about it, I mean, unless you're like, I want to build them a boat, like that would be hard, right? But that wouldn't happen in a day. What's one thing that I can do to delight or surprise somebody in my life? And that being one of the daily checklist items. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to like bring that others focus into my intention for the day. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll share is this can be done whether it's in person or not, in groups or not, one-on-one with your partner, your kids, your friend. I love the exercise called Rosebud Thorn. Some people may have done this before. So essentially a way of shifting the conversation and really giving permission or facilitating in a way where people have the permission to reveal something they may not have felt was safe to do before. I really like Priya Parker she talks a lot about great gatherings are ones that are lightly facilitated so people understand the purpose of why they're there. And Rosebud Thorn sets a purpose. So you can do it, again, like I said, in a group dinner or a group phone call, or just, I do it with my partner before we go to sleep. So the rose is, and this could be the scope of one day or like life right now. The rose, what's one thing that's going really well? The bud, what's something that's kind of budding and starting? And then what's one thing that's not so great right now? The thorn. And then feel free to switch up the order of those things so you don't end on a bad note.
Right.
I love that for just a quick shift to the conversation in a way that lets people feel heard and seen and like get to know one another on a much deeper level. It's especially good if you're at like a dinner party with some new people. it instantly breaks through the barrier of just random small talk, and gets people on a different level.
That's really cool. I love that idea. I'm going to take that home for sure. I love it. And I think, man, that probably facilitates some really incredible conversations, you know, and especially, you know,
people are dying to share these things. And if you don't have permission to do it, how are you going to share it? You know?
Well, and that's another concept that they talk about in conscious communication, like a withhold. So that's like such a great way to just, and with two positives and having only one, you know, perception is, you know, that
like, this is my struggle, you know, that the vulnerability.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's wonderful. And you know what, I have to say the idea of the gratitude practice, because I think that's something that most of us are familiar with as a regular practice. But I didn't think about the fact that strengthening that sense of social wellness could be done by yourself. Like that's really interesting to me. And I think that's really powerful, especially for this moment of social distancing too. But as soon as you said that, I could feel that warmth like growing, because I know how wonderful it feels to reflect on things that you're grateful for. So of course that's operating, even though you're not engaging. I think previous to this conversation, I thought social wellness had to involve engaging directly with another person. So that's really lovely and empowering that there's, you can do it. There's exercises that you can do by yourself too. That's awesome.
Yeah. One of the kind of pillars in the way that we look at and bucket social wellness is contribution.
Yeah.
And you can be a contribution to others without, you know, face to face necessarily. And of course, there's so many ways to do it that are not when you're alone. But I look at those as strengthening that, and also strengthening, you know, the feeling of connection to others. Because when you go through that gratitude practice, like there's no way to do it without feeling more connection to those people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It also breeds more of it.
Yes. Yeah. So have you seen, you know, your this becoming such a focus, and you learning so much about it? How have you seen, I guess should be the first question, have you seen your leadership style change? I'm curious, like, you know, in your role, because I think this is something that, you know, whether you're an executive or a team leader or a parent, I'm curious if this has impacted how you show up for your team, even honestly, even specifically in this time that we're dealing with right now, where your team might be feeling less connected, there's more remote work happening. How has that impacted your role as CEO?
Yeah. A few things come to mind. I'll speak to the team first, and then just personally. We decided to go remote the day it feels like the world changed here, which was March 12th. And we also kicked off a huge new project that same day. Like we literally had a meeting in the office where we were doing this kickoff for this new project. And then we said, and now we're going remote. So let's talk about how we want to do that. Then grab your stuff. Like it was very weird. As I'm sure we all have our own version of that. And we actually just had a retro yesterday because we concluded that big project. And in our retros, we do this as a team. Sarah, you're familiar with this, where we talk about, we focus on the process. We focus on not necessarily the work that was done, but how we did it. And yesterday we focused very much on the fact that we're all working remotely and how has that impacted us as a team, and went through the retro process, largely focused on that. So we talked about what have we liked, what has gone well, you know, We talk about dislikes, wishes. I wish this had been different. Learnings. I learned that this is actually, you know, this way, not that way. What ifs. We talk about ditches, things that didn't go so well. And then we made new agreements. And a large number of those agreements are related to the fact that we are now working remotely. So we're really focusing on it, and kind of putting it out in the open instead of, from a leadership perspective, just saying, this is what's happening now, let's keep going. Right. You know, that would be really short-sighted. And so that's one example. Something else that comes to mind, it's probably like halfway in, started doing a lot more check-ins and just, you know, drive-bys, because we can't do them in person anymore. And personally touching base with each team member and really getting into the worlds of like how they're doing and what's going on for them. And everybody has a different style of how this has impacted them. And it's really hearing that out, because if I can't understand where my people are at right now, emotionally and like personally, then I know I won't be able to understand how they're showing up at work. Right. And it was just easier to have a handle on that before. And also nothing was as dire, you know? And so making sure that those personal check-ins remain personal. And that's been, I think, a big help. We've also instituted in our weekly ops review, we used to do a round table, everybody give their personal and professional wins for the week. And we switched it to something that we used to do in the past, which is a red, yellow, green check-in. And so we do personal and professional check-in using red, yellow, green. And if somebody's in the red or somebody's in, you know, in the yellow or orange, which some people like to not commit to one color and make it like a blend. I'm chartreuse, which is a mix between green and yellow. Or I'm orange, which is, I can't commit to being red or yellow. Anyway, we do these check-ins and it really helps for people to, in like a not emotionally charged way, usually, share where they're at. And again, brings understanding for the rest of that week and working together, that there's stuff going on, you know? One of our team members is building a house that they were supposed to close on already, and they had their house on the market. And of course, nobody bought. And so she's like super stressed out. And I get it. Everyone does. And if we didn't have a space to talk about that, like, where would she have space to do that if we didn't make it?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how it showed up on the leadership side. I've also been really open. I'm going through like a lot right now, personally, and just some big things are coming up, and I want to be open with my team that that's happening, so that they see that they have permission to do the same thing. Just as important, that's just as important as them actually knowing where I'm at. Right. Because I know it's leaking into how I'm showing up. And so I want to, you know, nip it in the bud so nobody's like, what's going on with Amy, you know? And so, yeah, that's some things. And then personally, I just found that I've been a lot more, I don't know, I feel like this has somehow knocked down the wall of bullshit conversations, and it's just like real.
Yeah.
And that's really cool, because maybe it's because there's not a lot to check in on. Like, yeah, what's new? Like, that's not a conversation right now. Yeah. So it's kind of cool, actually. I have to say.
Yeah, I love that. Yep. Yeah. And I think, you know, I think as my role with Studio B has evolved, it's really illuminated a lot of my habits at home, and what you're talking about, those check-ins. As a parent, I'm experiencing those moments of awareness where I'm like, oh, even though these are children, they're having a whole experience. And this is, you know, I think I'm stressed out because I'm working from home and homeschool. Like, I think I'm the center of the universe in those moments. And then I look up and I'm like, oh, there are little boys that miss their friends, and they're disconnected from their teachers, and they're expected, there's all these crazy expectations happening right now.
They don't even understand it.
I know.
You at least can understand it and intellectualize it.
Yeah.
Poor kids.
Yeah. So it's been a really valuable practice to just kind of like, especially bless his heart, my middle guy, like he gets really emotional and really overwhelmed. So in those moments, it's so easy to snap and like, you have the expectation of how someone is supposed to be acting. So it's been really helpful to just kind of stop in those moments and get eye to eye with them. And, essentially what you're doing with your team, to just say like, hey, yeah, like I see you, I get it. This is nuts.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. Yeah.
You could try rosebud thorn with your kids.
I'm like so excited to try to bring this home. I can't even tell you. It's so great. I'll definitely report back on how that goes, because it's to allow children too, especially with everything going on, to give them a safe space to critique parenting or critique how something feels in the house. Like, I don't think that's something that's gifted to children often.
Totally.
So I
totally.
think wonderful idea. Yeah.
Let me know how that goes.
Yeah, I will. So we're approaching question time. There's one more question that I want to ask before we jump into group questions, and it's a simple one. And this is a question we'd like to ask everybody. What is giving you life right now? Like, what's really filling you up and giving you life right now?
I can't choose one thing. I'm such a rule breaker when it comes to these things. All right. My Peloton.
Nice.
Is freaking awesome because the instructors are really motivational, and I just feel like I'm like screaming back at the machine in a good way. They're like, you're crushing it, let it out. I'm like, it feels really good. And so I'm digging the Peloton. And what else is giving me life is I committed to a 10,000 steps a day challenge. And it's been, as we were talking about, Denver's always sunny and gorgeous. And so I've been doing a lot of walks and trying to get into nature as much as I can in the middle of the city, which is not easy, but been doing a lot of walks, and it's given me a lot of life. And then I am in the middle of processing through some things that feel misaligned for me right now, and going through the work to figure out what my needs are and how I'm going to shift some things in order to prioritize and meet those. And I wouldn't say that whole process has given me life. It's also been really stressful and like full of emotion and tears, but anything that important generally can do that. I've been really motivated by putting in the work to get really clear and start making some changes, and that feels really good. I get a lot of excitement around that.
Awesome. That's so awesome. Excellent. Well, I will officially, I'm going to switch to gallery view. I will officially open everything up for questions. If you would like to unmute yourself, you can. If you'd rather send us a question in the chat box, you're welcome to do that as well. But if you have any questions for Amy, please jump on in. Here we go. We have a question from Rachel. Excellent question. Rachel wants to know whose work inspires you right now.
Good question. I watched a TED interview. I can't even call it a TED talk, but a TED interview with Priya Parker, who wrote the book, The Art of Gathering. And I'm really inspired by her. I think that she's taken something that's super nebulous and like fuzzy and actually used a kind of more linear approach to how to gather and connect well. And that feels really inspiring to me right now. That's who comes to mind. And I'm also watching Vivek Murphy, the former Surgeon General, and the work that he's doing around loneliness. And his book Together, which just came out. I haven't read it yet, but I've been hearing amazing things. And I'm just really inspired to see somebody who is in a high position in government and in health begin to speak out in these ways, because I think when we hit this point, or when that happens, we hit a tipping point. And so I'm just super excited to see what is going to come next with this type of leadership on front stage.
Wonderful. Christine is asking, so if you could identify 3 qualities that make for meaningful relationship, what would they be?
The first one that comes up for me is reciprocity. And being in a relationship, not that it has to be a tallied give and take, but a relationship that feels mutual, and that both people are putting in effort to keep that relationship strong. I think we know the feeling of somebody who takes all the time, or when we're the ones who are always reaching out, or we're the ones who's helping out, and the pain or sadness that happens when we recognize that a relationship has gotten to that point. And so a truly reciprocal relationship is definitely one there. I find, and this is personal, I think that this is highly a personal answer that varies per person based on their own personal values. But for me, what is actually essential in all my relationships is mutual inspiration. So I want to be in relationships where both of us can gather, moments of inspiration from the other and from our shared conversation. It's so essential for me, and hopefully for the people I surround myself with, that we stay in a space of, not the entire conversation, but both of us play in the space of possibility, and walk away with something that we're like, man, that was inspiring, or I feel really energized by that thing that they said. So inspiration feels like a good number 2. And then commitment. For me, meaningful relationships need to feel like both people are committed. And I've actually taken that so far as to actually create a commitment between myself and a friend. I have one friend who, we met each other, I don't know, 4 years ago. And it was like instant love when we met. We were like, we could talk forever. We were at a party. I remember we just started talking to each other the rest of the holiday party. We didn't talk to anybody else. It was like I met my soul friend, and she lives in Boulder. I live in Denver. She's a single mom with 2 kids. She's very busy. She's an entrepreneur. So she's kind of hard to stay in touch with. And I am too, for other reasons. And I remember a year ago, I didn't show up for her in the way that I should have, in the way that I wanted to. I didn't show up for her. And it was just something she had that I didn't go to, that I really should have as a friend to support her. And I called her and I was like, I need to clear this with you. This is not how I want to be in our friendship. And I'm really sorry. I should have been there for you. And it opened up this conversation that what I learned is that she didn't think I was very committed to our friendship. And therefore she wasn't super committed to her friendship, but we both wanted to be. So in that conversation, we got to commit. And it wasn't like, I'm doing this. It wasn't like this, awkward, regimented thing. But now we have a shared understanding of how important we are to one another. And that has really shifted our relationship and our connection and our conversations. And so it feels really important for any relationships that people want to bring closer. So that would be my last piece, commitment.
Love it. I absolutely love it.
I'm on the bouncy ball, but I don't know if you guys can.
Yeah, every once in a while I see you shifting. It's great.
Amy, I wanted to say hi. I'm Jen, and I've heard so much about you, and I've loved this talk. And I just want to say, I don't really have a question, but I have to download your app now, because your app is made for people like me who are ridiculous. Like I spend so much time, like I do the gratitude practices, I, set the intentions, I make effort, and then like something unravels, and I think it's such a modern problem. And I want like to do better in my relationships. And I think that if anything, the COVID crisis has really highlighted that for me. And just the effort that I'm seeing, the commitment that I'm seeing from, I have two really close friends from childhood that are really special to me. And we're all, I have 4 kids. Like there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 10 kids between the 3 of us, right? And we're in our 40s, and everybody's working, and everybody's crazy. And every Thursday night since this crisis has broken out, we Zoom together and have a glass of wine. And you're right, these conversations are deep and real and like oxygen right now, and my fear is that that's going to unravel when things loosen up. And so I just want to applaud you kind of really pushing and bringing this awareness to social wellness. And it's definitely not something I thought about or gave enough attention to until right now.
Thank you for sharing that. I understand why you have a little bit of fear around things getting back to normal, because this has been so sacred for you and so important. And I trust that you're going to figure out, how that can shift in a way that stays important for all of you guys. That sounds great. I mean, I'm not a mother yet, but God, I can only imagine what a glass of wine with your girlfriends away from everything else must feel like for you with 4 kids. So,
yeah,
that's great.
It's really cool. I'm excited to dig into what your offering is and see how it could help.
Great. Let me know. I'm excited for you to check it out.
Yeah, I will. And thank you so much for coming on here and offering your time generously, and we appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was fun. It was a pleasure to be interviewed by Miss Sarah here. I'm so proud and grateful. Yeah.
Well, before we go, that's perfect. Can you please share with us how we can find the app, how we can find you, social media, give us all the ways.
Yeah. So people can download Fabriq in either Google Play or the App Store. It's Fabriq with a Q, Fabriq. And that's there. And then you can also check out our website, ourfabriq.com. OURFABRIQ. And then I can be found, Amy, at ourfabriq.com, or on social media at Amy Baglan.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live. It was so wonderful to spend this time with you, truly. Thank you.
Yeah, same. I hope everybody has a nice, relaxing weekend. And
enjoy that sunshine.
Thanks again for having me.
Send me pictures.
I know, I will. All right, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.